let's look back at the week, our week 7 recap. Easy for me to say if you just joined, battling a little bit of a cold, but I will be fine. It's Alabama week. I got to pull it together. All right, so Washington beats Oregon in the best game of the year. This is so funny. So I'm watching this game. I'm late at night, and I said, here's what I want. I want an overtime game because oftentimes I'm working on a Saturday, and I miss some of the best games of the year. And I said, a friend of mine, you need to watch this Deion Sanders. He has great feet. He has great decision-making. And what does he do? On third down, he throws an interception at the end of the game, and Washington is able to come back. I'm talking about the incredibly wrong game. The Colorado game is the one I was referring to. You didn't think that was the best game of the year?
No, the Colorado-Stanford game? No, but yes. I'm talking about Colorado. Wow, yeah, you were. Colorado-Stanford was what I said about that game is Colorado. That was on a Friday night, and Colorado's momentum has come to a screeching halt after this was the first loss that makes you get concerned about the season. They've still overachieved. So anybody who thinks Deion was exposed doesn't know college football. You just were buying into the hype that never should have been there from the 3-0 start. They're still fine long-term. Deion Sanders did make a bad throw, but overall, he's actually been the only good player on this team. And I think that Colorado had a few things go wrong in the second half, choked against Stanford. But look, they're going to have to pull an upset again if they want to get to a bowl because they're going to be an underdog the rest of the way, and they're 4-3.
No, and that was number 4 on the week 7 takeaways. As again, I've got that Jamarcus Russell scissor in my blood. I actually don't yet. I waited to take some of that till after. It's just a loopy cold I've got, but I'm fine. Number 1 was Washington beats Oregon in the best game of the year. 2 undefeated top 10 teams and the Pacific Northwest, but definitely lived up to the hype.
Absolutely. And everybody's going to blame Dan Lanning for going for the win and not the tie at the end of the game. He was on the goal line, 36-33, could have kicked a field goal and tried to get the win. Dave, I don't blame him at all. Honestly, I think you're on the road. And I always say when you're on the road against a good team, your options, your chances are better of converting right there than they are winning in overtime. Because as you know, Dave, you cover overtime always favors the home team in college football, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Given the fans, I mean, always. So I say you go for the win right there. It didn't happen. So what? They're going to they still both control their own destiny because they can meet again in the Pac-12 title game since there were no divisions in the Pac-12 anymore. Just the top 2 play each other. So watch out for that.
You say number 2 USC exposed as a fluke. To me, they weren't exposed. To a lot of people, they were. I just think this defense, the Trojans' defense, is horribly, horribly bad.
Let's go out right now and say, let's never compare Josh Heupel to Lincoln Riley again. And for those who don't know, Josh Heupel lost his job so Lincoln Riley could get hired at Oklahoma as OC in 2015. But Lincoln Riley cares nothing for defense. If Lincoln Riley's coaching this Tennessee team right now, Dave, they're 3-3 easily. And because Lincoln Riley can't, and Josh Heupel is showing he cares about defense. And he said in the press conference, he said, look, we're not going to lessen our standards on defense just because of the offense we may or may not run. And he said that, and he's been very clear about it. The part that exposed to me as a fluke was Caleb Williams played awful. And guys, remember, this was midterm week for Notre Dame. Notre Dame just lost to Louisville last week, who was exposed as a bad team, as an overrated, undefeated team because they just lost to Pittsburgh. And they just beat the brakes off USC. I think this game is losing to this Notre Dame in this type of situation, I think is enough to say you shouldn't be in the playoff. I don't care what you do the rest of the way. That's a bad loss.
Well, certainly is. And then lastly, on our week 7 recap is number 5 ACC down to 2 undefeated teams. And it just appears that there's a couple of conferences that, especially in the top half, top quarter, top third, are better than the SEC.
Yeah, it's we still don't know for sure with the ACC. We knew North Carolina was going to beat Miami after what happened last week. I think Miami's quit on Mario Cristobal completely. But Florida State is legitimate. That UNC FSU showdown is going to be epic. So they're the top 2 teams, clear cut. But again, there's still half a season to go. So I don't know yet if I think top to bottom, the SEC is still better than the ACC. But Florida State is making it clear this year they could compete in the ACC in the SEC. And look, I was wrong. I thought Florida State would collapse, and I was dead wrong.
Yep. You were down on Florida State. I was unsure. I definitely wasn't on board. I think they proved both of us to some extent wrong. But as far as just kind of looking back over, Colorado's momentum comes to a screeching halt. Still, they're 4-3. I think they won one game last year.
Yep.
This is still a program trending in the right direction. I think because they beat TCU and had some big wins early that people got overly excited. Goodness gracious, 60 Minutes did a second piece on Deion Sanders. So people got overly excited. The hype train really got going. But still, this is a program that Deion Sanders, the problem with Deion is he's going to at some point lose some of these great coaches that he's assembled. And they're paying coaches a lot of money. And at some point, when they lose them, we're going to see what Deion Sanders is as a coach. But right now, as an organizer of a program, he's very, very good. And I will tell you, I don't think you want him in the SEC anytime soon. Some other thoughts over the weekend is the Heisman race. So let's get to the Heisman race in just a second. But first, you have the Big Ten has a top 3 that is very clear, but you think Michigan's still overrated. I'm using eye tests, so I could be proven wrong. I still think they're pretty good and maybe the best team in the nation.
I think I've learned enough about college football to when you're playing an easy schedule, you never buy into it. Michigan has played air for 7 weeks. And I'm going to say they've played air. So it would have been shameful if they didn't look this good. And by the way, Penn State just blew out UMass 63-0. Why are we not saying Penn State's as good as Michigan? Because UMass is as good as every team Michigan's played this year. Their schedule's worse than Georgia so far. And UMass is terrible.
Hot seats, the storyline of SEC coaches. I'm going to put the over-under of 3.5. 3.5 SEC coaches lose their job, not by their own choice. They're not going to the NFL to coach the Dallas Cowboys, which would be fine with me. But I'm putting the over-under at 3.5. How many guys lose their job this year? Over-under.
That's an easy under for me because Jimbo Fisher is definitely in trouble after this loss. Sam Pittman's in trouble. Shane Beamer's in trouble. But Billy Napier and Shane Beamer both. Billy Napier saved his position with Florida. I don't think he'll be gone at the end of the year. And honestly, I think South Carolina is pretty much in it for a little while with Shane Beamer, no matter what happens this year. So 3.5 is an easy under. I actually would probably set that line at 2, not even a half, just straight up 2. And
okay, but remember this: you've always got the Dan Mullen shark incident that's floating
Jim
out
McElwain,
there.
you mean?
Jim McElwain. Sorry, Dan Mullen. Somewhere like I wasn't naked with a shark.
Well, the other
you've always go ahead.
you bring up former Florida coaches. Could Urban Meyer be jockeying for that Texas A&M job? That's a good job with the right coach.
Yeah, but Urban Meyer is so insecure. I feel like he wouldn't take that job because it's not Texas. Do you see what I'm saying? I think like he's just if I want to go back into college football, I got to be the state school. I got to be Oklahoma, not Oklahoma State. I got to be Texas, not Texas A&M. I think he's that petty.
Throw history aside real quick. There is no reason Texas A&M has not had the same decorated history as Texas. They've just massively underachieved and made missteps as a program over the years. But I've maintained, dating back to the 1950s, if Texas A&M had the right coach, it'd be a different story. They did have the right coach in Bear Bryant, but Bear Bryant had to rebuild the program from scratch. But they've never, ever maneuvered right with the program. But it has all the resources to be equally as good as Texas, and it's their own fault that they're not.
Yep. Heisman race in college football after week 7. I remind you that nobody wins the Heisman in October, but Michael, don't call me Penix Jr. is in at number 1, according to Caleb. Dylan Gabriel, number 2. Jaden Daniels, who I've got a weird feeling is going to end up winning this thing somehow, some way. Bo Nix is number 4. Drake May is the best player of this group. I'll go ahead and tell you, but that doesn't mean you win the Heisman. Why do you have those guys 1 through 5?
Well, Michael Penix, in the most significant game of the year in college football so far, threw for 4 touchdowns, played a great game. You got to put him in there. Dylan Gabriel, that Texas win is still in my head. Oklahoma had a bye this week, but Oklahoma, they're right up there. Jaden Daniels, guys, look at his stats. He's by far the top producer in college football right now, of any quarterback. The only reason he's not number 1 is the 2 losses. And one of them wasn't his fault. I mean, Jaden Daniels did his job against Ole Miss, so you can't knock him for that. And by the way, Malik Neighbors could be in the race too very, very soon instead of him for LSU. Number 4.
So weird seeing Bo Nix on this list.
It really is. And I didn't have him on this list last week, but Bo Nix played great at Washington. And he played so good that even in a loss, I put him in the Heisman race because Bo Nix they're not done on the year. And number 5, Drake May doesn't have the stats. Like even this past week, and he only completed like 57% of his passes. But I'm with you. The talent is there. And you talk eye test. Drake May's kind of got a Shedeur Sanders thing going where he's maximized. He's making up for all the other deficiencies on the team. The difference is UNC is 6-0 and Colorado's 4-3.
Huge if Shedeur Sanders doesn't throw that ball into coverage on third down, which was just really stupid. He should have thrown that ball away. If he doesn't and they beat Stanford, is he on this list in your top 5?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, easily. And I still believe in him. I can't go by him leading the league in yards though, or leading the NCAA in yards though, because let's be honest, all Colorado's doing is throwing the ball. They have no running game.
So top 10 in college football after week 7, Oklahoma, Washington, Florida State 3, Ohio State 4, North Carolina 5, Texas 6, Oregon number 7, Alabama number 8, Georgia number 9, Penn State number 10. Georgia 9, Caleb, come on. I know what you're doing with the power rankings, but that's a better team than 9th in the nation.
This is not a ranking based on who I think is better or based on my projections. This is a ranking based on your body of work. Alabama's 1-loss record is way better than Georgia's undefeated record. Georgia and Penn State have barely played a better schedule than Michigan, who you notice is not even in my top 10, because Georgia and Penn State and Michigan have played the flukiest, easiest schedules I've ever seen college football teams play. Alabama has not. And by the way, that I also have 1-loss Oregon ahead of those teams too, and I have 1-loss Texas ahead of those teams. So I got 3 1-loss teams ahead of Georgia, Penn State, and Michigan, and I'm not losing any sleep over it because Georgia, Penn State, and Michigan have played the easiest possible schedules. I think Boise State may have played a harder schedule than them at this point.